Forrester, let's do like you know how the Major League Baseball Network shows just a live look at the stadium? Give me a live look of Josh Pate warming up for the interview here. He's in his warm-ups. He doesn't have his crisp white T-shirt.
No, he's actually dressed up today.
Yeah. So we've got Josh Pate in just a second as he's loosening up, getting ready for a great interview.
All right. While we were talking to Joel Klatt in the last hour from West Lafayette, a conversation broke out in the chat room of the Mount Rushmore next round guest. A lot of people had Klatt on it. A lot of people had this guy on it, Josh Pate, 24/7 Sports, late kick Josh.
Absolutely.
Our Mount Rushmore has more than 4 people. We have a lot of favorites, Josh, but you are one of them. How are you?
Can I take exception with the chat? I don't feel like I've been around here long enough. There's some veterans of this show, and I still feel like I've got the new sticker. Even though we've peeled it off, you're still trying to scrape the rest of the sticker off my back. So I appreciate it. And I was lurking in the chat. For instance, I think Klatt's line about the whole hummus and carrot diet out in the Pac-12 is probably the best thing that's going to be said on the show this morning. And I don't think I'm going to match it. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, spoiler alert, next 10 or 12 minutes, I probably won't say anything that good. But I'm happy to be here and happy the chat accepts me.
Okay, so Klatt believes, I believe in Utah. I do think it's a really tricky game. I think it's one of those games, if Utah can get through, they've got an opportunity to really get rolling. This is such a swing game. I know it's not a great Florida team. I'm fascinated to see Anthony Richardson. Are you on board with Utah, and how do you think this game plays out?
I picked them to go to the playoff. So, yeah, I'm on board with them. So here's what kind of aggravates me about the whole college football playoff conversation. If a G5 team, let's take Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to Arkansas this week. If they win that game, it will rightfully be touted as a major win, no matter what Arkansas does the rest of the way, because it's a road win in the SEC. I think if Utah beats Florida, it should be touted the same way, but there's this subconscious disconnect that a lot of people hold different teams to different standards with. And so if Utah goes down there to Florida, Klatt was right. If they win that game, down the road, there'll be someone somewhere who tries to discount it because of what Florida did after that. Well, you guys know as well as I do, when a team has 5 losses in November, they're playing at a different level than you got from them if you played them in their home stadium opening night. So I would be really impressed if Utah did that. I think it's a testament to them that they've built their program to where they can be a 2.5 or 3-point favorite on the road. What's interesting to me is all this talk about the weather and the humidity and how is that West Coast team, even though they're about 1,000 miles from the West Coast, how is that Western team, low humidity, dry heat, how are they going to come in and handle that? But what's interesting is that only manifests itself if your style of play makes the weather lean on the other team. Second half, you got the advantage, not in time of possession, but in total plays run. If you're starting to lean on the other team, that's when that weather matters. Well, what could end up being one of the storylines in this game, if Florida's not careful and they suffer some 3-and-outs early, is Utah is actually the kind of team that is tailor-made to leverage those weather conditions in their favor. And I don't think anyone would see that coming. But, you know, what if we get in the fourth quarter and Utah ends up pulling that thing out and it's Utah falling forward for first downs and it's Utah having to stop play because of cramps on the other side? I don't think that's something that folks are ready to see, but yet it's a possibility because of their style of play.
Yeah, great point there. And I'm glad you're on board with teams, forget their records. When you play them, they can be different than their record. Great example was Alabama, Florida State opening Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That was 2 versus 3. Florida State was different that year in that game than they were by the end of the year. So I agree 100% with you there. On Utah, we are making this out to be like Kyle Whittingham is fearful of the SEC sometimes or something. This guy, a long time ago, beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. This guy, he lives for this opportunity, doesn't he, to sort of say, we belong at the table with the SEC.
Yeah. I used to hear the same thing said about Chris Peterson when Peterson was at when he was at Boise, actually. I would hear the conversation mainly because it was me and my buddies having it. And I would always defend this guy from Idaho, and they didn't even think I could spot Idaho on a map. And they would say, well, we're tired of Boise getting these accolades. If they played in the SEC, blah, blah, blah. And I used to remind them, well, if Boise was in the SEC, they would have access to the resources SEC teams do. They'd have access to the talent pool that they do. So you would give this coach who's running circles around his competition who are equally resourced out there, you would give him equal resources in the SEC. Moral of the story, Peterson would have been fine in the SEC. Whittingham would fit very well in the SEC. Only question with him would be the same question we're asking about Brian Harsin right now. And that is, how well can he recruit down here? And does he really speak that language, which you can only know once they come here? Kyle Whittingham and his staff, along with Kentucky, who Florida plays in week 2, and their staff, those are some of the most comfortable in their skin, know who they are, totally comfortable with their identity sort of staffs in America. I've been a fan of his for a long time. He's been there a long time. I don't think people realize how long he's been there, though. He's been there a long time. There are kids in high school right now. There are kids going off to college whose entire lives have included Kyle Whittingham as the head coach at Utah. It's pretty wild.
Josh Pate is with us, 24/7 Sports, at Late Kick Josh on Twitter, at Late Kick Josh. We always encourage you to watch and support his show. It is phenomenal. You guys love college football. Josh, that's what he does, is college football. I'm going to give you the Dunaway 3-team parlay. You tell me which leg you feel the best about.
It's a 3-team tease.
3-team tease, excuse me, Lance. The 3-team tease.
Big difference, Josh.
There is
you
a
know
big
that.
difference, yes. Yes, the 3-team tease. He has teased North Carolina State at East Carolina down to 1.5 points. He has teased BYU at South Florida down to 2, and South Carolina hosting Georgia State down to 2. Lance thinks there's an upset in that group right there.
I think it's easy money.
Yeah, and I want to follow up after you make your point on what you think about that 3-team teaser.
So my general policy is anytime we're talking teasers, pleasers, or parlays, I got to put the hood on.
Yeah.
Yes, let's go hoodie.
I feel kind of gross. Yeah. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so I really got nervous. That feels uncomfortable. I really got nervous the other day the more I looked at Georgia State, South Carolina. Only because you guys know with Jacksonville State, with Georgia State, any of these teams at the G5 level in the South, their rosters are just littered with guys who had SEC offers and then transferred, or for whatever reason it didn't work out, and they're way better than most people think they are. And nobody that I have spotted has talked about that game. Same with BYU, by the way, at South Florida. Everyone's talking about the games down the road those teams have. And it just makes me a little uneasy that, for instance, with South Carolina, they've got the home dynamic. They got the hype behind the program. And Georgia State's going in there as less than a 2-touchdown dog. So I'm not saying I'm picking the upset, but if Lance is right and we're trying to find the upset, that one makes me nervous. NC State, I think, will end up taking care of business because that's a more formidable opponent. So they're taking that thing totally seriously. But you've got the look-ahead factor, even in week 1 with those other two. And with Brigham Young, I'd be careful with South Florida, too, because of the same principle as Georgia State. You just know what the roster is littered with. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But what it does mean is if individual players are stepping up in week 1 and changing dynamics of games, you may have some more talented individual players there that maybe you don't know about very much in Provo. So, I mean, look, I don't know why in the world Dunaway can't just ride my Ramen Noodle Express plays. I'm going to win him money this year. So I try and give it out, and he says, no, your money's no good here. I gotta tease my way to a win against Vegas.
I'm telling you, Josh, Georgia State, I mean, Sean Elliott's team, 15 returning starters, 8 wins last year. They should have beaten Auburn. They beat Tennessee 2 years ago. They're not going to be intimidated. I think they win the game outright. With that said, Brown had a stat yesterday. I think for 12 or 15 consecutive weeks, double-digit dog has won outright.
We're up to 15 straight after the Northwestern win. A double-digit dog has won outright in college football.
Do you not get the feeling with the COVID year and guys coming back for 6 years, especially at some of these mid-tier schools, there's going to be more outright upsets this year?
Yeah. One of the things I've been asked the most this summer is 2021 was wild. We had all this churn. A lot of people, myself included, think it was the craziest college football year we've had since 2007. And 2007 is its own universe. But a lot of the suggestion in the way people have asked me is, okay, but don't we return to normal in 2022? I don't know that we return to normal at all because of what you just said. And I think it disproportionately bleeds down to the second and third tiers of the sport. See, Alabama's roster, Georgia's roster, they may not have a whole lot of COVID impact because, guys that were going to be around for a long time with them, they either started and then went pro or they probably already transferred out. But when you look at the rosters they transferred to and you start to look at some of the teams we're talking about right now, you got some guys that in any other era would already be done and selling insurance somewhere, and they're still playing college football, and it makes a difference. You got 18-year-olds against 24-year-olds in some cases, and it makes a big difference. And we're not talking about a season. These teams are not equipped to go wire to wire, but you're talking about a given Saturday. We're calling our tour this year the Every Given Saturday Tour because of the stat you just used, which I will shamelessly steal. Every Saturday, the whole double-digit upset thing, that's happening in our sport. And no, to answer your question, I don't think that's going to stop this year. There's what evidence does anyone have to back it up that we're all of a sudden back to normal?
Yeah, zero. One thing I do think is normal is the horseshoe on Saturday night. No, I think that game's going to look so much like Alabama Notre Dame BCS National Championship game down in Miami back in 2012, the Manti Te'o game. Manti's not playing in this one, but I think the gap between talent is that large. Do you disagree?
I don't think the gap is that large. There's a gap. The gap between 2012 Bama and Notre Dame was the impetus for trying to build a different kind of roster. And Brian Kelly did a good job of it. If you go back and track their last few recruiting classes, they upped their game. Notre Dame upped their game, not only in eval and development, but they just recruited a different kind of athlete. They used to just load up on big bodies. They understood that we got to get better on the perimeter. We got to get more dynamic in the backfield. And they did that. The reason why I cannot pull the whole Notre Dame upset trigger is because you're wish casting at that point. James Spann, and you're very market there, uses the phrase all the time, and I use it in college football all the time. If you want it to snow in Homewood, Alabama, that's one thing. But you can't just be taking one round of model output and ignoring 99 other rounds because that one little line there says, hey, it could snow 14 days from now. Yeah, Notre Dame could beat Ohio State, but for every one reason someone has there, which probably involves injury or turnover luck that you can't forecast, I got like 47 reasons why Ohio State should win it. But what's the worst pit of hell that we could enter ourselves into is if Notre Dame loses the game but loses close. Because then I have to listen to people say Notre Dame's overrated. They lost another game against a big opponent. But Ohio State's also trash because they should have covered and won with ease. And in reality, all we will have seen is a week one college football game.
All right, Ramen Noodle Express. What are we calling the tour this year? Give it to me again.
Any given Saturday.
There are a lot of things for you to remember, Brownie. Every given Saturday tour, and Ramen Noodle Express just funds the whole thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Every given Saturday tour. That's on me, Josh. My apologies on that. You get all of that on Late Kick with Josh Pate, at Late Kick Josh on Twitter. You do with him what we ask you to do with us. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, click that thumbs up, tell everybody about it, and support his show because he is phenomenal at what he does. Thank you, Josh. Enjoy the first week.
I appreciate it, guys. I'll see you next week.
All right, buddy. Take care. Josh Pate with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, tipping his hand that he might be on with us once a week.
Did he just say that?
Ooh.